Hello everyone, my name is Letitia. I'm a social worker based here at Hospice in Pietermaritzburg, Msunduzi Hospice Association. I have been employed in the psychosocial team for the past 9 years, and I'm currently the senior social worker here at Hospice. I'm going to be talking to you about grief, loss and bereavement. It's a topic that people are not very au fait with. And the reason for that is because we're currently going through a very difficult period in our lives, and everybody's aware that the COVID pandemic has really impacted on our lives dramatically. But before I talk to you about grief, loss and bereavement, I just want to give you a little bit of background in terms of the palliative care movement, what hospice does, and what we try to achieve here at Hospice. Hospice strives to provide holistic care for persons with a life-threatening or a life-limiting illness. By life-threatening and life-limiting, we mean that you have an illness that could probably cause you to die, or it could probably impact quite dramatically on your lifestyle or your way of living. Holistic care refers to the entire, it encompasses everything that makes you function on a day-to-day basis as a human being within your community and also within your family. Now, we all know that families have taken strain as a result of the COVID pandemic. As I said, holistic care refers to all aspects which form part of the person's ability to function optimally within his or her family, community, and society. I just want to stop there a minute and give you a bit of background in terms of where did this movement originate, what we do here. Palliative care is not a word or a term that a lot of people are familiar with. Palliative care originated in the UK, and the founder of the movement is called Dame Cicely Saunders. Now, she's got a very important definition or statement that she makes in terms of the movement. She says, bereavement, loss, and grief work is part and parcel of helping patients to die with dignity and to help them live until they die. I just want to look at the statement again. It says, helping patients to die with dignity and to help them live until they die. Just a little bit of information with regard to the statement. Sometimes people believe that when they are diagnosed with a terminal illness, for example, cancer, that they're going to die soon. There's also the mindset that when people are admitted onto the hospice program, that they're probably in the process of dying. And this is not true. We have patients here at Hospice who have been on our books for many years and are currently in remission. We also have patients, yes, that have passed on, and we hoped that we could have become involved sooner in their journey with regard to their diagnosis. And sadly, some patients are referred to us really almost at the end stage of their illness. What do we mean when we say die with dignity? And I want us just to think in terms of the COVID pandemic. Can a person die in dignity when they have no loved ones around them? Can a person have any dignity when loved ones have not had the opportunity to say their goodbyes, to thank the person for his or her input in their lives? And it's just a question I'm leaving out there. The pandemic has impacted gravely on the bereaved person's right to mourn for their loved one. It has absorbed the bereaved person, it has robbed the bereaved person of the opportunity to say goodbye and to adjust to a life without their loved one. Okay, I just want to pause there for a moment It is any human being's right to be able to mourn and grieve appropriately for their loved one. And as I mentioned before, when someone dies alone in a hospital, okay, there aren't loved ones around you, I think it's very difficult for the people who are left behind to actually come to terms with that person's demise or that person's death. And that is what is currently happening in our community. I also just want to mention that there are no time scales attached or guidelines which assist the bereaved to come to terms with the loss of that loved one. By this I mean that no one can tell you how long you're going to be grieving for your loved one. And there's also not a manual that's going to assist you in terms of the emotions that you go through on a day-to-day basis. We've just recently had a remembrance service here at hospice on Friday evening, and it's so important. The purpose of this remembrance service is to assist people to meet, firstly, other people that have also lost loved ones, and these are all our patients that were on the hospice program for the past year. So they come together and they realize that there are other people who are experiencing the exact same emotions, the feelings, the sadness, and the loss that they are going through. And when you have someone that you can identify with, then it somehow does make your journey a little bit easier, if I could say so. A loss, I just want to talk a bit about, let's look at what are some of the loss that we experience in our lifetime. A loss refers to how people deal with traumatic, distressing, or difficult situations, whether it is in their personal life, in their public life, and part of their personal life is also their spiritual life. I just want to stop there for a brief moment and mention that when we're talking about a loss, we are referring to something that was important in your life. A loss can refer to a loss of the job, being retrenched, a loss of a limb, which is very personal, a body part. And what we've experienced during the COVID pandemic is a lot of people have been forcibly retrenched through no fault of the organization. Hours have been reduced at organizations as well. And obviously as a result, when there are reduced hours, there's also reduced remuneration. Lots of family members have had to make huge adjustments. For example, married couples have had to move back in with their parents in order to be able to live a lifestyle where they are still available for each other. And finances is a huge has a huge impact on people's lifestyle. So I've mentioned some of the loss, and I just want to focus a bit on the spiritual loss. Some of the churches during the COVID pandemic are only allowed to allow a certain amount of people within their churches. This ultimately then leads to people feeling they are disengaging from church, or they feel neglected in their spiritual life. They are not able to pray together, perhaps in the groups that they used to have on a weekly basis, whether it's in the women's group or in the men's group within their churches. You also had to book at some of the churches before you could attend a service. Sometimes people would make bookings late. As a result, what then happens is that people lose interest, because if they've reached their numbers, allocated numbers, they are no longer allowed to allow more people into the church. So spirituality is very important when we're talking about palliative care. Remember, initially I mentioned holistic care. Your spiritual life is so important when you're coming to the end of your life. People want to be able to pray together. They want to be with their loved ones. They want a priest or a pastor or a rabbi to be able to come into their homes and to say that we are here for you, we are thinking of you, we are praying for your family. Those are so important, especially at the end of life. And sadly, the pandemic has eroded that ability and the possibility of that opportunity. We also have some people who have had multiple losses, meaning more than one person in one family has obviously passed on as a result of the COVID pandemic. What then happens is that people actually start asking questions. Where is God? Why is God allowing this to happen? And I think it really impacts gravely on people's spirituality when they are asking questions. And we can normalize that and understand that when you are going through a difficult time. Spirituality is important, as I said, but the pandemic has not allowed us to be able to continue in the way that we've always been used to. The pandemic has brought in its wake as well feelings of anxiety, fear, stress, upset, tiredness, sadness, an overwhelming sense of isolation and detachment. Really strong words if you think about it. Our sense of safety and freedom is being threatened as we are forced to adapt to a new way of living and mourning. We currently have the holiday period. Children are at home, off school. Young people are preparing to go to college, to go to university. Family members are planning for Christmas to spend time together and for the new year. Unfortunately for some family members, a lot of people that are quite important in their lives will not be there on Christmas Day, will not be there on New Year's Day. And that is what is causing part of that detachment that I spoke about. People have had to cancel some of their holidays as well because they're concerned for older family members or even younger family members to be together with them in fear of, because they are fearful of the fact of infecting family members. Our concerns about the unknown, the uncertainty, and how long this will last adds to an already rapidly changing and uncertain future. We do not know whether we're going to be under another level of lockdown before Christmas. There's a lot of rumors going around that the president is probably going to address us again before Christmas. And these kind of rumors is what makes it very difficult for family members to make plans. And that is the uncertainty of the unknown, not knowing what the new year brings as well. Are we still going to be forced to wear masks? Are we still going to be forced to count people coming to a funeral, coming to a wedding? Should we be on another level again? Can our country afford economically to go through another level 4 or level 5? All of these aspects impact on our day-to-day lifestyle. As human beings, it is integral for us to thrive on trust, touch, and togetherness. We are not able to do those things when we are not able to touch someone, because we're not allowed to hug the person, we are not allowed to kiss young children that we see, and we are fearful of the fact, again, of newborn babies, of infecting children, very young children. We believe that the new variant, the Omicron, is targeting younger children. So a new fear again for parents has developed as a result. To add to our burden of keeping your family and yourself safe is sorely tested in an environment which encourages a more insular lifestyle, as we could be a possible source of infection to others, as I've mentioned previously. So this is culminated in bereaved persons finding innovative ways in coping with trauma that they are experiencing. I just want to focus a little bit on an article that I read, which I found very interesting, and was recently in the Daily Maverick. And it also, the topic in this article says, on grief, the pandemic, and the world we have lost. And it says you've got to feel it to hear it. And the person who wrote this article is a gentleman by the name of David Kessler. He says we have to find meaning within our grief. David Kessler is a trained psychiatrist, and he worked under Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a psychologist who coined the stages of grief. Now, some of us are familiar with those stages, but I just want to focus on what he says is his personal journey as a result of losing a son. When Kessler lost his son, he was suddenly confronted with the unbearable reality of grief and loss and how to deal with it as a parent. As he worked through the different stages he had so often spoken about, he realized there had to be something beyond the last stage of acceptance. The idea of meaning did not take away my pain, he says, but it gave me a cushion that I had not noticed before. We are dealing with the collective loss of the world we knew. The world we knew is now gone forever. We're going to find meaning, he says. We're going to come out the other side of this. But this world that we've all been accustomed to is now gone, meaning the world before the pandemic. While finding good and meaningful moments in the pandemic is important, Kessler also notes that it is not a bypass to the pain. I thank you for this opportunity, and I hope that people will find some kind of resonance with what I have spoken about today. Thanks for your time.